Well, it is a real privilege to welcome our listeners and viewers to another edition of Closing Time. I'm Iain Bryant, your host, and just super excited to welcome Joseph McPhie of Southern Utah Title Company in St. George, Utah, to the program. Joseph, thanks for being willing to join us.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for the invite.
So, I have to say, you and I were prepping for this a little bit a week or so ago, and you shared with me kind of your first introduction to Stuart, which I will tell you is the most unique introduction to Stuart I have ever heard. So yeah, if you don't mind, just
Okay.
share that story. That was a good
Sure,
one.
sure. Yeah, so I was attending a national ALTA convention, and it was the first type of convention that I had gone to like this, and sat next to a gentleman. And one of the interesting things was I said to him, I'm Joseph, your name? And he says, I'm Stuart. And I says, oh, who do you work with? And he says, with Stuart Title. And I said, oh, that is so convenient for you to be able to say that your name is Stuart and you work for Stuart Title. And he says, yes. And then he handed me his business card, and it said Stuart Morris Jr. And he was just such a nice guy and wonderful, and showed me around the convention, the rest of the convention, and introduced me to a lot of people I would have never met. And he was just one of those genuine, really, really nice people that when I just, sometimes you get around people that just buoy you up a little bit and make you feel like you want to be a little bit better person. And that was my takeaway from Stuart Morris Jr. was that he was that kind of guy, and that encouraged me. I'd already talked to a Stuart rep, but hadn't really pursued it much. And after that, I went back and said to the Stuart Title rep, yeah, let's get this thing going. So that made a big difference to me.
Now, was that, and I can't remember if this was part of the story or not, was that your first Alta event you'd been to?
Of that kind. I think it was an NS3 meeting.
Okay.
And I had never been to one before, so I didn't know anybody. And it's sometimes I'm nerdy and a little hard to just make friends, if you don't know anybody. Yeah. And so that made a big difference to me. It meant a lot to me, and I've still stayed in touch with Stuart Morris Jr. and he's been a great guy. So makes
awesome.
It's the crux of this business, isn't it? That it's all about relationships. And
that's
that made such an impact on me.
I think, it's a good reminder, right? Whoever you're sitting next to, just to extend that common courtesy and grace, and it's a cool thing. To comment on that, you think about the Morris family, and Stuart Morris Jr. is a great example of that. So many of those good aspects of caring about each other and not being a respecter of persons and that kind of thing have carried through to the present day. So it's always fun to hear those stories.
He's a great guy.
Although I do have to say, you are perhaps the first person I've ever met whose first introduction to Stuart was with Stuart Morris Jr. himself.
Yeah.
So I love it. Well, taking a step back a little bit, Joseph, give us a little bit of a sense of your operation there at Southern Utah Title Company. Just kind of size, scale, locations, business mix, that kind of thing.
Sure. I'm sure nobody really wants to hear much about a small title company in southern Utah, but we are about 300 miles from south of Salt Lake City, and about 120 miles to Las Vegas. So we kind of cover a little tri-state area between southwest corner of Utah, and then we cover a little bit of Nevada and a little bit of Arizona. 2 counties in Nevada and 2 counties in Arizona also. But we do those under separate entity names. Southern Utah Title was established in 1949, so we're in our 75th year. I'm not quite 75 yet, so it wasn't me, but I've been the benefactor of a good reputation in the area, long-standing reputation for doing good work.
Mm.
We have the benefit of having a title plant that we developed and have used for all these years in several counties. And so, we're fortunate to have about 80 employees combined
Wow.
in about 5 different title entities, different names, different brands. And in '05, when prices were high, we decided that we should buy. Isn't that, isn't that
As
how
did
that
so
works?
many of us.
But we bought a couple of smaller title companies and kept their names and their brands and their labels, and so we have a few offices here in St. George, Utah, and one in Kanab, one in Cedar. We have an office in Nevada that operates both Nevada and Arizona.
When did you do those acquisitions?
When?
Yeah,
In 2005.
2005.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
And
right about the peak.
okay, yeah, right. Hey, that's the time to buy, right? Um, so you did a couple of them, is that
Yeah.
right?
Uh-huh. Within just a
I,
couple months of each other. Uh-huh.
I, as you know, certainly either an aspiration of many title agency owners and or part of the history of so many title companies is growth by acquisition. I wonder if you might reflect on maybe lessons learned from those acquisitions, what you did well, what you learned from it, that kind of thing.
I don't mind sharing that at all. About 1999 is when we opened our office in Nevada, in Mesquite, Nevada, and that was a pure startup for us
Mm.
in a different state, small operation. I think we had 3 to 5 employees at any given time. And by 2005, I wondered if there wasn't a better way to do that than just start up from scratch. And that's why we were looking at acquiring a smaller operation and bringing that in. And I'd have to say that I don't think there is a big, huge difference in one or the other as far as cost goes. And you have startup costs if you're just going to start from scratch and build a little operation, and then you have acquisition costs, and both of them provide some pros and cons. I can see doing both, but we probably, I would say that it went quicker for sure to acquire, to build the business up, having acquired the foundation of the business from another entity. It definitely expedited the growth. So that made it a little easier, and of course, you hope that you keep the right people when those acquisitions occur, and that they provide a foundation of relationships for you. Since that's really what this business is all about, it's just a
That's right.
relationship. So rather than having to start the relationships from scratch, being able to acquire and have a little bit of a start on that, I think that helped.
Is that part of your ongoing strategy as well? Would you continue to look at acquisitions as a means of expansion?
We
Or?
have, when we do, we keep our eyes open. We really don't have a large appetite for growing beyond our local area. We really expanded, as an example, to Nevada when we had customers, obviously,
Yeah.
that moved there. We wanted to maintain relationships, and that's really the expansion that we've done. It hasn't been on an agenda to become the biggest title company in all of the United States or to cover territories that we don't have relationships in. But one of our key employees, former owner partners, has, I think, 61 first cousins in the area.
Wow. No.
So, to go 30 miles away or 35 miles away to Mesquite, Nevada, because there's family relationships and business relationships, and it's really kind of an expansion of a small community. When I first got to St. George, we had about 40. I think Washington County was about 48,000, and now Washington County is about 220,000.
Wow. Wow.
So, we've had a pretty significant growth rate, as the rest of the country has. I mean, Western United States, I think Las Vegas has grown by 300% during that time
Yeah.
frame, and we're fortunate to be in an area that's really grown. That helps.
Certainly get some of those tailwinds of population
Yeah,
influx, right? Driving
absolutely.
new builds and that kind of thing. Um, tell me a little bit about you personally. Um, what occupies your time,
Yeah.
and would love to hear a little bit about that.
So I have two jobs. One is I'm the general manager and chairman of the board for Southern Utah Title. My second job is a struggling startup orchard slash farm. That's 45 miles away. So
Wow.
that's my that's my second job, and that's what occupies my time. Besides my family, I have a fairly large family, even for Utah. I have 9 children and a wonderful wife, and uh, I've been here at Southern Utah Title for 32 years. I was fortunate
Wow.
enough to have somebody bring me in, take me under their wing, train me in the business, and ask for my help. And really, I'm not that big of an exception in our company. We've had people that their only job in their life was with Southern Utah Title, and they started their career and they
Wow.
retired at Southern
Wow.
Utah Title. So we still have people here that have been here for 50 plus years. So a lot of longevity in our business here. That's been helpful. But personally, life for me is about family, business, and chores. So
Well, I
without
mean, from what you described, running the business, hobby farm and orchard, 9 kids, not a lot of unaccounted for time. That
no,
sounds
there's not. Yeah. Most of my best friends are related to me. So
like. I love that. Well, I can say, and certainly from a personal standpoint, and I know uh, so many of my peers and those of us in the industry, frankly, struggle with the whole concept of work-life balance. This is a tough business. It's a demanding business, right?
very hard.
And you've been in a part of Southern Utah Title Company for 32 years. You raised these kids, 9 of them. Like, tell me how did you how did you get through that? That's a lot of responsibility, both personally and professionally. And how did you how did you find your
I
way
think
through it?
sometimes you make commitments and then you just have to step up to those commitments.
Mm.
And first of all and foremost, I've always told my kids, I have 5 boys and 4 girls. I've always told them, marry smart.
Huh.
And I did that. I married
Yeah.
smart. And I always told them, if you have to choose between beauty and smarts, make sure you marry smart. And then as each one of my kids got married, they would tell me that they didn't choose. And I said, well, neither did I. I didn't have to choose either. I got beauty and smarts. But I'm just saying, if you had to choose, it's probably better to choose smarts. So I've got a loving, wonderful, wonderful wife and mother. And as far as work-life balance, I think she's had to kind of get comfortable once in a while going to Disneyland with the kids on her own.
Wow.
And unfortunately, that's I've been involved, uh, attended a lot of activities, and sometimes a lot of activities, and but at the end of the day, that's a full-time job too. Sometimes raising
Yeah.
the kids, and I've been lucky and fortunate, blessed, really, to be able to have a wife that's been as supportive as she has been. Some people aren't.
Yeah.
And some
Yeah.
people don't have that choice.
Yeah.
They're head of household by no fault of their own or
That's right.
no choice of their own. Sometimes they're just default head of the household.
That's right.
And I've been fortunate enough to have that support, and I like to give her the credit because I certainly don't want the blame if it comes around the other way. So she has all the credit
Yeah.
for raising. Really, everybody loves their kids, I'm sure, but I'm extremely grateful that I told him not to make any major life bad decisions. And so far, knock on wood, I don't have any in prison or jail or doing anything bad that I know of. So
Sounds like a wild success to me. That's what I'm shooting for. That's what my
good
wife and I are shooting for.
kids, good kids,
Uh,
good family, and like I said, it's been good, but it has required a lot of time here. I mean, this is a tough business. I think it's one of the hardest businesses in the world when you combine dealing with the time restraints we do, with other people's money, with the insurance side of the equation, on top of the escrow and
Yeah.
the fraud liabilities that exist right now, and the title risk. And being in a smaller community, you have a lot of easement issues and access issues and meets and bounds descriptions, and it's just a tough industry. You have to know so much.
Yeah.
It takes a long time to learn it.
Joseph, do you, as you reflect on your career within the title business, uh, would you say that it's harder now? It's more challenging? Are we in a more challenging time? Of course, I think many of us feel that way, but you can look through a couple decades here, and I suppose it's always been hard. But how would you reflect on the current environment
I think
as
it's different.
compared to
It's
history?
different kind of hard.
Hmm.
It's almost cycled back to the same kind of hard. It used to be that the hard part was that the clients would walk in and they would say, I want to get this easement, I want to get access over this road, and you'd go to work trying to figure it out. And then it kind of got to the point where the title issues, the more that you deal with subdivisions growing in an area, we had a rapid growth rate in our area,
Hmm.
kind of makes the title side easier for a while.
Yep.
And then I think we've gotten to the point where automation has now taken a lot of the cream off of the milk, and so now we're dealing with the difficult files again, because everything that's easy is automated. I think to a large extent, a lot of the easier money, or I don't know how to say that, correct me, but a little bit of the it's become more difficult again. What the client walking into our door again now is bringing us problems, which I always see as opportunities for business.
Yeah.
Right. Problems help build relationships in a way that you can't build it otherwise. But it is harder and sometimes not as profitable to spend as much time dealing with the problems. And so I guess I just, looking back, wish that it was a little easier.
Yeah.
It got easier. It got easier for a little while, and I think it's more difficult now. In Utah, we started with affiliated business relationships with realtors, developers, lenders, 3 or maybe 4 years ago, something along those lines. And I think that's definitely made it harder. In a lot of ways, I think that the skill sets needed by the title companies have diminished a little bit, because we've had to grow so rapidly, and who's doing the work. I think we have 260 plus title companies in Utah.
Wow.
And it's just hard to find skilled people, and that makes it harder. Makes it harder for us to do our work.
Would you say that, in light of, obviously, volumes in general are lower, right? Kind of since mid 2022 in terms of home sales and that kind of thing. So you would say, in some senses, if I'm hearing you right, there's a higher volume of more challenging files. Maybe talk to me about how have you seen that have an effect on your staff at all, in terms of having to deal with more problematic files, more difficult underwriting, perhaps a greater strain on communication between the clients? And have you seen that have effects on your staff? Or
what we've consciously tried to do is make sure that our staff isn't pushed. In other words, we maintain a little bit more staff, I would say, in our company, because we're dealing with that type of work. If we were dealing with pure refinance work or
We're all
pure,
lot and block.
all lot and block
Yeah.
subdivision
Yeah.
work. That's so much. It's easier.
Yeah.
I shouldn't use that word because it's never easy, but it's easier.
That's right.
And because of that, we've maintained some staff levels that we otherwise wouldn't have because we're dealing with more difficult work. Yeah, for sure.
You know, I know that you had some career experience prior to Southern Utah. Maybe take us back to kind of the journey, how you ended up there, and then once you landed there, how you found yourself in the role of running it.
I kind of have an interesting background that way because I didn't come. I'm not an attorney, but I did work for a couple different law firms,
Hmm.
uh, and was introduced to title insurance actually through an attorney out of Florida,
Huh.
who took me over to the courthouse and showed me how to search and what an easement was and what a security note is, and it just kind of introduced me to the business in general that I had no idea about, and none whatsoever. And then I moved to Oregon and worked for another law firm out there, and they asked me to, and I was in IT. I was computer systems and applications, and they asked me to develop a series of documentation that they could use in real estate transactions, a little bit larger firm, and for both Oregon and Washington. And so I went through that routine, and then I moved to Southern Utah and was actually in computer services and IT, and went in and was helping the Southern Utah Title with their IT and networking and all that. And the general manager at the time asked me how much I was making and whether or not I wanted a raise. And I said, sure. So he took
Hard
me,
to say no.
he took me under his wing and really gave me the opportunity in the business that I probably would have never had. I had enough exposure to. I didn't have enough experience to be hired by him, but he was at a point where he wanted to hire somebody to take care of their systems internally, and so I looked for efficiencies, and he asked me, what I could do to help them as far as they were. This is in '93, so this was in a time when they were really busy, and he said, we bought these new computer systems, none of them work, we're not more efficient than we used to be, can you make me more efficient? And I said, absolutely. And he said, you're hired. And that's what I spent the next few years doing, is trying to look for efficiencies in the title industry, ways to improve it. At the time, I think they had a single fax machine.
Wow.
That they were using. Single fax machine, a couple copiers, and so we looked for one efficiency after another, and it eventually developed into him, he and his other partners selling me and a group of other employees the business.
Wow.
And so I bought that in '97.
That's the way to learn a company, right? Your entree in.
Yeah, it was.
You're looking for efficiencies. You get to know that workflow really well. That's probably about the best way to come up in it, right?
It was a good education. I started typing commitments and policies, and just to learn how to make it more efficient. And you're right. That's a good introduction into the business, because you learn a little bit of everything, every single process in the business. And as part of that, we ended up developing our own software, starting that 32 years ago, and we're still with it today.
So you have your own proprietary title production system?
Yes, we do. Title, escrow, e-signatures, e-recordings, 1031 exchange, equity escrow, construction draw services. We've kind of had to develop that because we're a small community. I think you kind of need, when your customers come in and say, hey, can you do this? It's nice to be able to say, yeah, let's figure that out, how to do that for you. But Southern Utah Title's been doing seller finance carryback, services since I think the early '80s.
Wow. Hmm.
So we just built software to accommodate all of that.
Do any other title companies run on that
No,
software system?
no, just we run all of our operations through that software. Same software.
Fascinating. Well, especially in light of recent news, right? In the past 6, 12 months, I think there's probably a lot of title companies that think, to control their destiny on their software probably becomes a more important consideration these days. So you all are positioned well
I've been
to maintain that
fortunate.
control and flexibility, right?
It has given us some flexibility for sure. And for me personally, I wouldn't sleep at night unless I had some of the controls in place. You're dealing
Yeah,
with millions of dollars of other people's money. That's a big challenge. And, uh, you know, to be able to review a daily reconciliation every morning, to be able to make sure that things are secure when you send them out, to make sure that, a lot of the systems help ensure the way we do business.
yeah,
I guess that's takes a little bit of a pressure off the management if your system kind of dictates your procedures that you're going to follow to do the closing
yeah.
or to do the title. I think that's taken a lot of pressure off over the years as we've streamlined the software. And of course, we've had input from tens of employees at a time,
Yeah.
guiding us along the way when they ask for something. Can I have this feature, or can you develop something to help me in this process? They've pretty much built, the employees have pretty much built the system by asking for things that make it more efficient. And we've had the privilege of being able to do that in-house for 30 years. So
That's neat.
it's become hopefully easier for the closers and title people and policy. So we hope that we're just a little bit ahead of the curve on technology, but I usually expect that to last more than 6 weeks to 6 months, and sometimes it
Yeah,
lasts 6 years. But it
that's
depends.
that's how it is.
I want to stay a little bit ahead of the competition.
Yeah. Well, gosh, I mean, you're very humble in your approach and demeanor, Joseph. But to think about, 30 plus years, 80 employees, by the way, is not a small title company. That's a big title company. And what you all have built there with a great team, with great tenure, is pretty cool. I guess as you think forward to the future, um, maybe talk a little bit about or speak to your vision for the team and the company in terms of the journey forward. What's next for you all?
Yeah. I think it's going to be more challenging for us
Hmm.
in a lot of ways. Um, so I think that automation will probably make certain processes in our industry more streamlined. And we've 260 plus title companies in Utah is not that's a lot of competition.
It's a lot.
And so it's definitely going to be tough, but I think we're up to the challenge. We do have great team members, smart. Uh, there's a certain personality or character that does really well in this business.
Hmm.
And they're smart, they're service oriented, they're detail and people oriented. They have a desire to help people overcome their problems. That type personality kind of finds its way when things are tough.
Yeah.
And so I'm confident that we will. I think we're just going to have to continue to diversify in some of the services that we offer. We do offer, like I say, some 1031 exchange services.
Hmm.
We do have a little e-recording service. We have some. I think you have to do some diversification. Have some of your revenue come from or combine revenues from other sources so that you can really take care of your employees. So going forward, that's my main goal is to provide a head of household type earning capability to our employees, so that they can have not only their needs, but if their kids need braces or they want to be able to go on a vacation or whatever else that they have their wants to, That's my personal goal, is to make sure that we're paying at a level that people can have a nice lifestyle. We provide all the benefits we pretty much try to keep our people working bankers hours as much as possible. If we need to hire a few more people and make a little less money, we'd rather do that to preserve the longevity of our people. I think our average longevity is probably about 17 years.
Wow.
In our company. So we would prefer to take a little bit of a load off of them, enable them to spend a little bit more time with their family, spend a little bit more time with their community, rather than just working 80 hours a week, which, sometimes it can't be avoided, but for the most part, we try to keep bankers' hours. So with that, I think if we execute well, we're available to our client to help them resolve their problems, and we're nice, friendly, then I think we can move forward, and we'll just kind of have to play it by ear. But I think there's always opportunity for people that are skilled with people and excel in their business.
Well, I love the way you talk about the future and kind of the way that what success looks like for you all as an entity, and that you started that by talking about how you can generate really good livable incomes and people providing for their families. And that resonates deeply with me. I'm sure it does with your team members as well. It reminds me, something that's stood out to me at Stewart too is the way our CEO over time has always talked about not number of employees, but number of families represented. Because that's why we're doing this, right?
That's
you ask anybody what the most important thing is to them, it's their family, right? And also loved your recap kind of thinking about that push-pull, which is inevitable in any partnership or relationship. You talked about it with your wife, where there's sacrifice on both sides, right, to make the thing go, and that's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. Well, Joseph, any final comments or thoughts from you?
I don't want anybody to think that I've got anything figured out. I'm certainly in no position to be advising anybody else. Every day is a challenge. We just kind of wake up and deal with the challenge of that day. I think sometimes life is about eliminating as many problems as you can and just move forward. So I don't want to take the position that I know anything, but I am grateful for the industry. Very grateful. I've been able to support my kids, my family. I've been able to help people make a living. That's been very rewarding to me. I'm thankful to the industry. I think it's a very difficult industry.
Yeah.
Faces a lot of challenges right now with fraud, but and that's unfortunate. But overall, I'm very grateful to be in the industry. I would encourage others to do it. It can be rewarding, but it can be profitable. And I think it's all about when you deal with the problems and how you deal with the problems.
That's right. That's right. I totally agree. Totally agree with that mindset. Well, Joseph, I know for our part here at Stewart, we are so proud to be partnered with you and with your team at Southern Utah Title, and we're just grateful to be able to support you all as you support your communities, and in what is a great opportunity to maintain real estate investments, right, and secure the American dream, really. So we're grateful to you and your team and the opportunity to partner with you all. I want to say thank you to our listeners for joining me, Iain Bryant, on Closing Time for this episode, and thank you, Joseph, for joining us. Look forward to the continued partnership in the years to come.